So I've got a new toy that I want to try out. A cast iron griddle with two sides, a grill and a flat top. But what I'm interested in for this video is the flat top. Now, we've recently made the Oklahoma smash burger, which would have been perfect for this, but we're gonna do something else that involves beef, onions, cheese, and bread. You got it, the Philly cheesesteak. I'm gonna put this thing to preheat, and as you can see, it fits perfectly over two burners. So what I'm going for is sort of a hot spot here where the big burner is, and a lower flame here where the smaller one is. And I got this cool little groove here that's gonna collect all the excess fat. All right, that's on. Let's talk about beef. What I have here is a chuck eye steak. Now I'm pretty sure that this is not a cut that you normally use for this. I'm also thinking we're gonna be cutting this super thin, so it doesn't really matter. But chuck is full of flavor, there's lots of marbling, and I mean, look at this muscle separation. And half the price of a ribeye. What I did was, I put the steak in the fridge overnight on a rack. It's sort of a quick dry age. A couple of things are gonna happen here. The surface is gonna dry out, which is gonna help it pick up more color when you're searing it. And the texture is also changing. It's become much firmer to the touch. Anytime you're making steak or any other kind of meat for that matter, I highly recommend you do this quick dry age cheat. You're gonna get a much better sear, flavor, and texture. Anyway, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put this in the freezer for about 20 minutes. And what that's gonna do is gonna firm up the meat so it's easier to slice really thin. If you for some reason don't know what a Philly cheesesteak is, it's, well, steak, cheese, onions, and bread. In my opinion though, also mayonnaise. So we're gonna make a quick mayonnaise. What I'm gonna do is an experiment though. I'm gonna make an onion mayo. So I've got a little shallot here that I'm just gonna grate straight into the measuring cup. My thought process is, since we already have onions on the sandwich, we're gonna double up on the flavor. Alright, that's as much as I'm gonna get out of this shallot. Ooh, you know what? Let me see if I have some onion powder as well. I don't, but if I did, I would have put it in because that's just another dimension of flavor. Okay, now in there, I'm just gonna crack an egg. Just the whole egg. A little splash of vinegar. A pinch of salt. And about, I don't know, maybe a cup of neutral oil. You could use olive oil, but it tends to make the mayo a little bit bitter, so be careful. This should be enough. The more oil you put in, the thicker your mayo is gonna be. All right, so now I'm just gonna stick the blender in there all the way into the bottom, into the egg, and just start blending. As you do, you can start the emulsion starting to happen. I'm gonna go into turbo mode, and then just slowly start pulling up. As you do, the oil slowly starts to emulsify. Magic. Okay, yeah, that works. Okay, mayo done. Now for the beef. Out of the freezer it's coming and it's much tighter now. I'm gonna use a very sharp knife to cut this with. Now hopefully you can see how the grains are going. So I'm basically gonna cut across. Start with this side here. And you're gonna wanna cut as thin as possible. Something like that. Okay, now that we have our steak cut, I'm gonna put it aside. I'm gonna clean my board and cut an onion, about a medium-sized one. And I'm simply gonna cut it in half and then give it sort of a medium chop, so that I have kind of like squares. I don't know, not that important. Okay, so that's our onion done. Time to make the sandwich. But before we do, we got one last thing to address, the bread. I've got a nice squishy hero, you'd call it, a baguette, whatever. This is mostly what we have in Europe, so that's what I'm working with. I'm gonna cut that open. But I'm gonna leave this back side attached so that we don't have all the meat and the insides falling out. And for the cheese, I'm using some Gouda. Gouda? I don't know. Since we don't have provolone in Europe, that's what I have to use. All right, well, I have everything ready here, so let's make this. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil, and then using the spatula, I'm just gonna spread it out. Then on go the onions. Ooh, getting smoky up in here. So I'm gonna keep these on the big burner here, and I'm gonna cook them until they just soften up and pick up a little bit of color. I'm gonna hit them with a little bit of salt. And at this point, I think I'm gonna pull them towards the cooler part of the griddle. I'm gonna hit the griddle with a little bit more oil. And throw the beef on. Spread it out nicely. This is where you salt your beef. I forgot. Take out the onions and mix them in with the beef. At this point, it's time to go in with the cheese. And we're just looking for it to melt. Now, I'm just gonna mayo the bread. And I'm just gonna try and scoop this in. And here it is in all its glory. This is incredible. There's a reason why this is a thing, right? And to be honest, I thought I'm not salting the beef, but it's really good. There's salt on the onions, there's salt in the mayo. Cheese is salty, so it doesn't almost need it. And it's gross in all the right ways. If you've never had a Philly cheesesteak, go make it. Roll out.